Welcome back to another episode of Gatehouse Insights. This morning, I'm joined by Andew Meiliunas. Andrew will shed a light on wills and estates litigation, how he manages his and his clients' emotions and expectations, how setting boundaries has been critical for his success, and much, much more. Make sure you subscribe to the Gatehouse Legal Recruitment YouTube channel where you can see it all. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Louise.
Thank you for joining me nice and early this morning.
Yeah, good to be here.
I wanted you to take me back to the very beginning and talk me through what inspired you in choosing and specialising in wills and estates litigation.
I started my career at a small city law firm, Marnie Solicitors. My then neighbour was the managing partner, and I was lucky enough that he gave me my start. And I had a general practice, but then there was one partner who had quite a thriving wills and estates practice, and then he was at his stage of his career where he was looking to wind down, and I was sort of like right place, right time, which got me doing more and more wills and estates work, so much so that it just got to the point where I was exclusively doing wills and estates work. And then when I went to Moores Legal, I went in there exclusively to do estate litigation and haven't stopped doing that since.
Mm-hmm. So you've never really tried any other area of law? It's always been wills and estates?
So not since, so early on, dabbled in a bit of family law, debt recovery, conveyancing, so a bit of everything early on, but possibly, I wouldn't say necessarily earlier than most, but early on, it got quite specialised quite early for me. But that seems to have worked out pretty well for me.
Yeah. And, you know, as a wills and estates lawyer, dealing with so many different emotions, and it's quite a personal time for a lot of people. Could you share a little bit about, one, how you manage people's emotions so that it doesn't impact you personally? And then secondly, how you manage the client's expectations to make sure that they feel more at ease with the process?
I think you can only ever manage people's emotions up to a certain stage. There's a point where I would say they might need specialised intervention, and that's where healthcare professionals and healthcare workers need to come in. So you do as much as you can, but there is a point that there are some people who need more help than what we as lawyers can give them. I think clients, they like to be heard. That they want you to hear their story, and if that's sort of half the battle, if they want you to understand how they've gotten to this point in their life. They want you to sort of just know where they're coming from. So I'd say you have to be a good listener. You've got to be a good listener. I think there's no substitute for face-to-face meetings. In the last year, obviously, we haven't had that luxury, and I think you can notice a change in the dynamics of relationships. I've always been a firm believer, like there is no substitute for face-to-face. Doesn't have to be all meetings, but certainly key points in the relationship early on when big decisions need to be made. I find that just that face-to-face rapport creates a different connection and relationship. We've also looked, certainly just at Maurice Blackburn, we've done a lot of training in vicarious trauma training, and they've developed like an award-winning training program for all staff. So it's not just lawyers, not just legal assistants. It's like a compulsory training module at the firm where they try to equip us with just better skills, coping skills, how to look after ourselves and the clients at the same time, and not let the client's stresses and emotions sort of just overwhelm us, because we're exposed to it all day, every day. And if we allowed every client's emotions to sort of, consume us, it would be pretty overwhelming.
What do you do to, help you not let your clients' emotions overwhelm you? What do you do there?
One of a little something that I've done for some time, and the firm may not like this, is that I don't actually have work emails on my phone, and for years I've done that now, and just something so simple as there's nothing worse than, say, you're coming home from work, you get that last email on the train that is something that you didn't want to have to deal with before you're about to come home to dinner to your family, and you wouldn't be present at home. You'd have these work would just always be mulling over. And again, weekends are there for you for you and your family. Checking work emails on weekends, I just don't believe much good can come from that. So it's just that boundaries, and clients understand that, but it's just a case of you've just got to manage their expectations, and they need to respect your boundaries. So like that's just like probably one example of, but I would consider that almost like a game changer to separate work and home.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think over the last week, we've been speaking about boundaries. I've been speaking about boundaries with people in the team and even others. And one thing to keeping, I suppose, mentally healthy is setting those boundaries, because we're connected more than ever before with social. So it's good that you've been doing that for years. At what point did you realize you had to set that boundary and say, look, I'm not going to have my emails on my phone?
I reckon probably kids was probably a real sort of turning point for me, both like on the work front, in life. And you just, when you sort of, real open is when you like when a 3-year-old says like, "Dad, get off your phone." Like, yeah, I don't think that like that's pretty like confronting, really, when your own kid's saying that. So that's a real eye opener, and you realise you don't have to be checking work emails 24/7. And so I think was probably for me the biggest change.
Yeah. Now, there's pros and cons to every area of law, but could you share a little bit about, your pros and cons for you in wills and estates?
I think that some of the pros would be the work is varied. No two families are the same. Just when you think you've seen it all, the next family comes through, and there'll be some unique scenario and facts that you just could never have sort of foreseen on the horizon. I feel a little bit bad saying this, but it's a stable area of work because unfortunately people are always going to die. And I think it's human nature that families are going to have disagreements. So work for us is sort of like it's recession proof. If anything, the worse the sort of economic environment is out there, the more desperate people get, and so our work remains constant. And if anything, like last year, I would have said it increased as people got a little bit more desperate. I find it's satisfying work. We help people change their circumstances in life that can change their trajectories. It's allowing people to sort of maybe have a deposit for a house that they could never have otherwise saved, pay off a mortgage that they never could have ever dreamed of paying off. So it changes people's lives. Some cons would be, look, it's highly emotional. It is very emotional, and having worked in this area now for over a decade, look, I'd be lying if I didn't say that it's probably starting to weigh on me. Like after a decade on the front line, you I think something's wrong with you if it doesn't affect you, because you get emotionally connected to your clients. You work so hard for them, so it sort of starts to take its toll. And then another con, but it's possibly other, almost could be all areas of law. it's the times when you can't help the client, when there's no claim to be made, no estate in which to challenge, and it's very clear that there's an unfairness and someone's been really hard done by, but there's just no way forward. So I don't like being the bearer of bad news, and unfortunately, it happens. And so that's probably one of the most unfortunate parts of my job is when you say to someone you can't help them. There's nothing. They're maybe out of time. There's nothing, and there's just nothing you can do. So yeah, that would be a con.
Typically, on average, how long does a file is usually with you? Is there an average point, or does each matter vary?
I think as a rule of thumb, you I would say sort of no less than 6 months, and no, like you could get a lot of them done in under 12 months. And so it's that sort of 6 to 12, often around that sort of 9 month type range. So unlike, like, I've got colleagues say medical negligence or in the injuries, they often are acting for clients 2, 3, 4 years. Our area tends not to be the case, and a phenomenal amount of our matters settle at mediation. And so that's allowing matters to resolve much earlier. And not only are they settling at court-ordered mediations, parties are sometimes open to earlier negotiations. So some matters could settle in a matter of weeks as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that it is satisfying work. Could you unpack that a little bit more for us and tell us what aspects are actually really, really satisfying that you love about it?
Look, the luxuries that we have at Maurice Blackburn is that we cater for, like, we strive as a firm to be accessible to all Australians. Like we want, the firm talks about access to justice. So we act for everyone. It could be you got the top end of town to people who are, or of no fixed address, you know, squatting, living in caravans, couch surfing, doing it really, really rough. So we get to see a part of our society that maybe a lot of people wouldn't be aware of or choose not to be aware of. And to be able to help these people who sometimes I'm really impressed that they get to us in the first place. And sometimes that it's because of a social worker or someone who just tells them, you should go speak to a lawyer. And these people don't use computers. They don't have smartphones. Some of our clients don't even have phones. Like we have to resort. We send. Well, they don't have addresses or phones. We send mail to their to the local town post office, not to a PO box, but they know this person, and they come by once a week and they give them their mail. So we're still in this day and age having to deal with clients that way, but that's fine. We're prepared to do that. We have clients in sort of, say, in hospital, in prison, but we firmly believe that everyone deserves their day, and I'm pretty satisfied with that. That we don't turn people away lightly. We're prepared to sort of give everyone that go. And that is, I think, the ethos of the firm. And so I find that very satisfying. Like that's why I'm not really drawn to, say, the corporate transactional mergers and acquisitions, where one could say it's it's just companies moving money around, getting wealthier. We're dealing with individuals and their livelihoods and their futures. So, yeah, I find that very satisfying.
Yeah, sure. Now, you also you've got a young family, and one of the things you do is set boundaries by not having emails on your phone. What else do you do to split your time between, work and your, growing your young family? What works for you?
Well, I'm pretty lucky that I have a supportive employer and a supportive manager. I think it's very easy for firms, or not just firms, all businesses, to talk about flexible work and what does that look like. But it's very easy to say it, but it's really the doing and the actions that I think carry more weight. I've been lucky enough to have two rounds of parental leave, which you know um, was like life changing times for me, and I'm now as a manager lucky enough to have staff like male and female, where I'm able to encourage everyone to take parental leave, knowing the first hand benefits of that. I think you need an amazing legal assistant to help manage your life, and I'm lucky enough to have that at the moment. My assistant, he is amazing, and he makes sure I know what I need to do and where I need to be, and keeps my life in order. You need a great team around you. You need people where if you're not in the office, you can comfortably know that things are going to move along in your absence. And so to to have a team around me with where I trust them fully, that's just a relief to be able to go on holidays, to say I can't come in today, to just know that things are just going to sort themselves out. I start my days early. I won't say how early. I think that will scare some people, but in the last few years, I've shifted my days forward, and that gives me time to do the things I need to do: go to the gym, walk the dog, make lunches, and the like, and then still be around for the family come dinner time, bath time, and the like. So yeah, by moving my day forward allows me to, certainly my work and personal, allows me more time in the evenings to be there for the family. And you need a supportive family. Like this, like you can put the best sort of boundaries and that in place, but the nature of this work does mean that there are times when you are having to work out of hours, and so you need a supportive family, and everyone, that they need to understand why you need to do what you do. And so communication, and like all good relationships. So again, I'm very lucky to have a supportive family.
I wanted to move us on to networking because you are well known within the legal profession, and I've seen you at many networking events over the years. And you network a lot with other lawyers. Tell us what have been the benefits of networking with other lawyers has been on your career.
Yeah, I think it's like, just thinking about that, and something that I discuss with my team a lot is it's important, I think, to distinguish the idea of networking and business development. And I think that's a trap that a lot of junior lawyers and operators probably fall into, that they think that they get told they need to network, but they don't really understand what then to do. We could go to an event every week if we want. As a lawyer, there is somewhere some form of networking, drinks, breakfasts in Melbourne every day if you wanted to find it. And it'd be really easy to just tick a box and hit that KPI of saying I went to X number of networking events. But it's the ability to then turn that into a relationship and grow that into something more. And so it's, what do you do after you meet someone? It's, there are people that, some events, you actually, as you sort of get a bit older and wiser, you start saying no to things because you can say that it's not the best use of your time. You think, who could I possibly hope to meet there that is going to somehow help me, or it's in my interest to be there. But so you get more strategic in where you go, where you devote your time. And I think, networking's the way you meet people. It breaks the ice, but then it's what happens after. It's the catch-ups after, where you explore if there's any sort of shared sort of synergies and sort of mutually beneficial. I think it has to be mutually beneficial, but it doesn't have to be, like a monetary sense. Like, relationships don't have to be about what's in it for me for business. I think there's a huge amount of peer support that, as fellow like lawyers to lawyers, so I know personally I get the greatest amount of support from other lawyers from other firms who we can all relate to one another and our sort of struggles. And so that personally for me, that's I love nothing more than those type of relationships with other lawyers. And it's just that they understand sometimes what you're going through. Like, you can have friends who are accountants or financial planners, but lawyers, we have our unique set of problems and sort of struggles. And so other lawyers can be great for that. So it's sort of so it's all very well to meet people, but then you've just got to turn it into something more, if that's if it's worth it, or or not. Only time will tell.
Don mentioned to me that you were, or you still are, a marriage celebrant.
Yes, I am a marriage celebrant.
Tell us more about this.
It started off as a bit of a joke with friends, where I always said to them, if you ever get married, if you let me marry you, I'll get qualified. And most people said no, but one friend could actually see the benefit of that. And so then I had to go off and do the course and stay compliant. I've been lucky enough to be the celebrant for mainly friends and friends of friends. And so it is a great way it's like my present to them. And it's really nice to see people for one of the happiest days of their lives. And so I've done the service several people at work, other lawyers in Melbourne. Last year was a bit quiet for the marriage celebrant industry, but look, I'm certainly not in a position to give up my day job anytime soon.
Awesome. And final thoughts before we close. Any final thoughts you want to leave our audience with?
Look, I think last year was it was a really good time to sort of reflect, and you've got to sort of weigh up what makes you happy and the things that matter. And if you don't if you don't enjoy your work, you've really got to question why you're doing it. It could be that you need to change where you work, the team you're working in, your role within that team. And so, if you don't enjoy work, I think everyone suffers. You suffer, your family suffers, your co-workers suffer. And so, you've got to take responsibility for that. You can't leave it to other people to make the changes to make you happy. You've got to be the one at the end of the day to take the initiative to make those changes in your workplace or in life to find that sort of satisfaction. So, I think that's something I probably took away from last year.
Andrew, thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Louise, always a pleasure. Thank you.
And that's it. Another episode of Gatehouse Insights draws to an end. Thank you for watching, and thank you for sharing this video with your friends. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the Gatehouse Legal Recruitment YouTube channel, where you can see more.